Welcome to an InfoInput demonstration. As a global pre-sales engineer, we get engaged with lots of partners, prospects, and customers around the world on deployment of capture scenarios and use cases. Today, we're going to be focusing on a few neat demos around the InfoInput intelligent capture solution. InfoInput provides flexibility with our cloud and on-premise OCR engines. We integrate directly with Microsoft Azure, AWS, Google, Hyperscience, and Abby. Our demo video today, I'm going to be pulling the best use case examples from our demo set to show the power and why InfoInput is different. I'm going to start with some cool stuff first and work our way back to some of the more standard capabilities. Our first demo is going to be an AP invoice automation with a ERP system and showing some three-way match, the ability for our customized UI, specifically advanced indexing forms, to put different scripting capabilities in here. So you're going to see the ability for us to validate a purchase order number, the vendor name ID, look out for different things like duplicate invoice detection, and provide the ability for us to reject the invoice, which will allow the workflow to fork, allowing successful batches to move forward and the rejected invoice to be placed into a defined queue. Let's take a look at let's now execute this particular demonstration. I'm opening up our HTML web client. I'm opening up our HTML web client where we can execute either a scan using Twain or ISIS compliant scanners, as well as our disconnected scannerless, as well as our disconnected driverless scan functionality. Today, I'm going to be leveraging our basic file import capability. I'm going to select the job, in this case, AP Invoices ERP. I'm going to browse out and grab some demo documents here. And in this case, we have 5 separate images, in this case, invoices, and we're going to now close the batch. These batches will now come into a queue, as you see here. New batches today. We'll open up this particular set of invoices. As you'll see on the left, we have the red document, which means that it's stopping on document 2 due to a low confidence threshold or some validation warning. In this case, our customized advanced indexing form can be put into use by leveraging error warnings. In this case, you could see we have these buttons, so search PO, where we get a valid purchase order number from our ERP. Now the message is duplicate invoice. We can put another character to adjudicate that, as well as select the reject invoice check mark. And then when I tab out, you'll see that that error message has gone away with the OK button. Hit the next tab. This is going to move to the next low confidence document. In this case, purchase order not found. It just didn't have a hyphen in it. Select the right one. Hit the next button, and it moves to our last document. In this particular case, we have a mathematical equation issue. In this case, subtotal plus freight plus tax does not equal the total. We're going to put in there is no freight here. Hit the tab, and the calculation issue has gone away. You can also see our tab view here, where we can look at the line item information as well as the header footer information separately. This is a great tool to allow. This is a great demonstration to show the three-way match and the bidirectional data integration between an ERP system and the InfoInput solution, validating certain information, and then being able to quickly assess whether that data, in this case the purchase order, the vendor information, is accurate. For our next For our next demonstration, we're going to be leveraging the AP invoice with line items example that you just saw, but with our cloud comparison. In this case, because we integrate with Azure, Google, AWS, and Abby, as well as Hyperscience, we can actually utilize each engine per single document to see which engine does better with that particular invoice. Now, in this case, we're going to be utilizing the mapping tool that's built into our intelligent OCR. As you see there in the below part of the screenshot, you'll see a match type of exact. In this case, the source field is a dropdown that Azure, Google, AWS, and Abby returns. So each one of these particular cloud providers has pre-built connectors that return a pre-built number of fields. And all we have to do is hit the autofill if we name our internal document class index field the same, or utilize just the add button to manually select the target field within our document class index field value. You can utilize this as a voting across engines with additional scripting to see who does better based on the confidence returned. But that would result in additional page click charges from each one of the providers. So let's take a look at how this particular demonstration unfolds. So we're going to select our new batch here. We're going to select the multi-line invoice, and then we're going to select some files to bring in. In this case, we're going to select these particular documents. And these documents will then be brought in. Certainly classification could be utilized here as well. And then I'm going to hit the close batch button. Okay, now we've returned the results from each one of the 4 cloud engines. We're using our advanced indexing form to put the different confidence indicators as well as all the common fields that you'd see across an invoice. You can see here what as you can see here, you can see the confidence indicator for the vendor name has, well, it actually read it pretty well. It only says it has 43%, and that's why it's stopped here in red. You can also see the line items across each engine. Right now, AWS doesn't seem to be receiving a result there. So Abby, Vantage, and Azure did the best job in terms of pulling that particular invoices line item information. As we move to each document and we put our cursor in the field, you'll see where on the image it extracted that, it highlights it in yellow and starts to blink. And let's see here, Azure did a pretty good job extracting the information. And we go to our line items and you can see how the line items were extracted a little different here. How each engine actually extracted that information. As you can tell, the part number is actually the top line. And in Azure's case, it did extract each block in the description line. So it looks like Abby did the best job separating the information. In this particular case, the description got put into the part number field in AWS. All right, we move to our next document. Here, you notice that the Google engine did a really good job grabbing the shipping information. Now, again, these are pre-built form recognizers or parsers, depending on the engine you choose. And each one provides a different set of fields that are returned. You can see here that the subtotal, for some reason, the other engines didn't really read. But in the same vein, the shipping freight didn't get pulled very well. Go on to our next one, CR Expo Corp. In this particular case, Azure did a great job reading that, likely because the word freight versus shipping was seen in the label pair matching, whereas the other tools seem to get very similar information. So this was a really good example of an invoice that scaled really well across all the different engines. You can see the line item information unit cost, it didn't pick up the unit cost, it picked up the unit of measure. So we'd want to correct that through the Azure engine by uploading some sample documents. You can see here, again, pulled the description into the part line, and it looks like Abby did a good job separating the two, but didn't grab the unit cost as well. And our last invoice here, as you can see, AWS is formatting based on what it sees, and it doesn't put it into a short date format. And here on the line items, well, looks like unit cost is something that we need to work on with some of these engines. AWS did a really good, actually put the extended amount into the unit costs. As you can see, each engine with some fine tuning could be tweaked to meet all your customer or prospect needs. We'll close this batch. Okay, our next demonstration is going to be using a similar approach, using multiple cloud engines on a single ICR form, in this case, a consent form, which is using handwriting. In this particular case, we certainly could have taken the approach of using a zone ICR approach, putting boxes in those particular areas that you see on the document. And however, utilizing the intelligent OCR engines, we're going to actually read all the OCR on the document, including the handwriting, then use a regex expression, looking in this case for the label of that field, first name, last name, address, etc. And as you can see in the screenshot below, this is a little bit different approach to data extraction. Utilizing both regex and exact match types, we can leverage the cloud tools to be able to return the right information. This is just a different approach to the exact match functionality. Now let's take a look. At that particular batch. So we're going to come in, we're going to create a new batch, and we're going to select our multi-cloud consent form. In this case, we're going to leverage our classification tool to automatically separate these particular documents. I'm going to select our LabCorp TIFF file and then process these particular documents. We will now come in and select the particular documents that we want to open up, in this case, the batch for our immunization consent. And you can see here the different documents that get extracted in red, and you can see the results on the right. And you can see here, so in some cases, the middle initial is not being picked up, as well as the age. And again, that's a tough one. You can see here that I don't know, that is a 6 or a 1. I'm sorry, a 6 or a 4. And you can also see the birth date is being picked up really well by Azure. Google, actually, that might be a 6. So it really depends on how you look at that particular handwriting and how a person writes the particular legible numeric or alphanumeric digits. We move to the next one here. You're seeing that Abby's actually grabbing the phone number from the vaccine adverse reactions area, whereas the phone number, as you can see here from the other providers, is being read perfectly. In this case, we also do a really good job in Azure pulling the birth date. And then lastly, our last form here from Andy, 240 Dasher Lane. Very interesting that Google repeats the home number associated with the address, whereas Abby's actually reading something totally erratic here. This just gives you a really good idea of how each engine's pulling the information. All right, we'll discard that and close the batch. Our next demonstration is going to be utilizing some basic zone capture, both OCR, optical character recognition, as well as handwriting or ICR. We're going to capture one document with several document types or classes within it. We call this a mixed sorts type capture. We're going to be utilizing our form type definition with auto separation as part of our classification engine. In this particular case, we'll utilize the Microsoft computer vision technology. In this case, it is also a structured zone, so we're not using our intelligent OCR. And then you're going to also see our advanced indexing form per document class. So for each type of document that's different, you'll see the indexing form change. Let's go and take a look. All right, so we're going to go and capture a new batch. I'm going to select our mixed sorts, as I call it, and our TLD. And this is our mixed sorts with the different document classes in it. We're going to come into our sample documents and grab our 11-page single document. And the system's going to now separate those. So you see here, it's all in one document. You got all sorts of different types of documents here. We have an application form. That's ICR. We have a check where we're actually going to read the MICR line on the bottom and the CARLAR, which is courtesy amount, legal amount recognition. Here we have a HICFA form where we're going to read not only the information that's structured, like the patient name and such, but also the line item detail that you see there in the table. We can leverage our image enhancement functionality, specifically the color dropout, to drop out the red, read the document through OCR, and then put the red back in through our image alias functionality. We have a ICR as well as OMR, optical mark, and you can see here, based on the sex or the location, citizenship, we're going to leverage our optical mark recognition to see if that's a true-false value. And we have our UB04 form. This is a common medical claim form. We're going to see how we extract that with very good confidence. In this case, OCR or barcode recognition capability to read the particular barcode in the top right-hand corner. And this will do a database lookup. And so let's see what else we have. Oh, that's a following page. That's a following page. And then for all our Office Space fans, our Anatech TPS report. Take a look at what that looks like. Now, we've already done some classification, so the TPS report and these two charts to the right should stay with it as we process the document, and we'll close this batch and see what happens. Okay, so we'll open up that particular batch that we just scanned in, and we'll start at the top. As you notice, the indexing screen brings you right to the first red low confidence document. But we'll go up to our assistance application, and as you can see, our advanced indexing form looks a lot like color and check boxes. Looks very similar to what you see on the actual form, along with this case, a signature detection to make sure that this was signed. And we can use our optical mark to look at a dirty or clean zone. Okay, and as we click on each one of the different indexing fields, you can see how that's highlighting it on the form. We did a really good job extracting this information. Go move on to the checks, and as you can see, the document class changes, our index form also changes. So we can get very creative as we want to with the particular end user UI experience. The HIC4 is a good example of leveraging not only our structured zones with our zoom the zone image, so you could quickly and easily see what that looks like on the actual document with having to zoom into every specific area on the document, and then also our line item information with our confidence. You can see here how we've gone and done that. Now, you'll notice on this particular document, we do have some pipes or separators between the month, the day, and the year. But as you notice, that is not an issue in this particular. As you notice, that is not a specific issue with this particular data extraction zone because we're dropping that red background prior to OCR. So we get a very clean read. Here it's actually saying, hey, I'm not sure if this is an actual value, and we have our confidence indicator. By unchecking that box allows us to move, and if I hit my next button, it puts me to my it puts us to our next low confidence character. All right, so let's look at some of the other types of documents. Again, this used our classification engine to separate that 111-page document into 7 different document classes. Here we have our ICR reads as well as our OMR reads. And then you can see here we actually broke this out into a multi-tabbed advanced indexing form broken down by section. And you can see here, this is for the office use only. Go to the UB04 form and you can see how we've utilized natural language processing to extract the questions in each one of these areas, as well as each one of the line item and individual zones. Our housing application, we leveraged our case name, our case number, and a social security number using a zone OCR and leveraging our barcode separation and recognition. And again, our TPS reports here where we have not only the first page, we used our classifier to say, hey, if you see this TPS report, that's your separation, keep anything behind it. And you can see that it did bring in some financial information associated with that TPS report. We'll close this batch and move on to our next one. For our next demonstration, we're going to be leveraging the Google document split specifically for the procurement documents. So this is a new feature, not only in the InfoInput product, but also available to Google. So Google did come out with 2 different types of classification and separation tools, one for procurement and one for lending. We're going to also be incorporating the new Microsoft Azure classifier in the next release. And as some of these cloud AI engines come out with new features, we're going to be adding them. In this particular case, we're going to be taking in a single document and then having the tool actually separate the particular documents and also classify them. This is very unique in that end users typically require some flexibility as new types of documents are coming in, whether it's a new invoice type or receipt. So Google will automatically, using its AI technology, figure out what the document is and automatically apply the separation techniques. Now, inherently in InfoInput, you can utilize the form type classification definitions, where you upload a sampling set of your first page of each one of the documents for the system to automatically separate. Just like other competitive IDP platform type products, an admin would have to log in, or an end user would have to have job workflow rights to be able to add those sample images. That would also slow down the particular process of capture and separation. So utilizing the Google pre-built procurement document classifier, we're going to allow the end user to basically bring in brand new documents and have Google figure out what it is. So let's take a look at how that works. Okay, we're going to come in here. We're going to select a new batch. I'm going to select our Google splitter, and we're going to go grab a particular document. In this case, a document full of different document classes. Okay, so we have what looks like a enterprise car rental receipt. We got your basic invoices. You got your basic e-ticket itinerary for an airline. You got some hotel bills, you got some utility bills, you got a receipt here at the end. Okay, as you notice, it's all in one particular document. We're gonna close the batch, which will process it. And then we'll go and open up our batch here where you'll see each one of those particular documents separated into its own document class. Now, in this particular demonstration, all we're looking to show is the separation and the classification by document type, not so much the data extraction. And you can see in the particular case of a utility bill, obviously utility bill is a kind of invoice, but we can actually separate those into its own document type fields. Now, these are, as you see here in the drop-down list, these are the defined document types that actually get returned by Google. So currently, you would not be able to customize specifically these different document types. So you would have to work within the framework that has been built here by Google. Now, the classifier that's coming out with Microsoft is going to allow you to have a full console application that will allow you to modify and classify documents as you see fit, more in line with general documents versus procurement or lending as Google has moved forward with. All right, so we'll close the batch, and as you can see, Google did a pretty good job actually separating each one of these documents out. All right, so for our next demonstration, we're going to be leveraging some intelligent OCR with handwriting. Now, in this particular case, we know that these are sales receipts. However, every sales receipt looks and feels different. So we're going to be using the pre-built Microsoft Azure sales receipt form recognizer. So any of the pre-built form parsers that come from the cloud engines return predefined fields. So it's not like you can go in and say, hey, Azure, go and grab this field. So these predefined, pre-built Azure form recognizers will return a common result set. In this particular case, you can see merchant name, address, phone, transaction date, etc. It does a really good job actually reading the tip and the amount if it is handwritten. You could also scan these in sidewards, upside down. Certainly we have auto orientation within our image enhancement tools, but it doesn't seem to matter as it relates to invoice capture. It doesn't seem to matter as it relates to sales receipt capture. So let's take a look. We'll start a new batch here. We'll select our AR, we'll select our AP sales receipts Azure. Now, built into the extraction profile and InfoInput, you just select the drop down from the Azure extraction, and you just select sales receipts. And by default, it automatically knows what to do. So the deployment of something like this is very quick and easy. Let's select our receipts. Let's just grab a couple here. Let's see, restaurant. I'll grab the Marriott and the Chipotle. Oh, this gas one's a good one too. Okay, and then we'll select the close batch. Now in the background, we do have the batch manager running. This is going to tell us where those particular jobs are within the process. And you can see that it's in the intelligent OCR step. This will allow us to know when a document is ready. Now, in the case of queues, we can customize the home page of the InfoInput HTML client to show when documents are ready, when documents are suspended and somebody needs to come back to, as well as the rejected invoices that we had looked at previously. So you can see here from our job earlier today, there was one document that was rejected, and that was this particular one here, which had the duplicate invoice detection, which would allow us to go and rectify that later. So our receipts should be done. And if we go in, here's our receipts. Okay. And so we'll start at the top here. You'll notice this one is actually sidewards. And for some reason, build your own happiness. This is actually a Chipotle, and you can see here that it did a really good job reading the information. And go to our next one. Again, side words. Did a pretty good job extracting that in case, in this particular case, it put a semicolon in, so we'd have to adjudicate that by typing in the right one and the total amount. Here, we did a really good job reading a computer-generated receipt, and it shows the actual subtotal and the tip, and then in our particular case, a handwritten total. And here we just have to put a period in between. Okay, here we have our Gusto. You can see that it extracted with high confidence all that information, and unbelievably, actually, it read $14.15. Not sure how it read that very well, but it did a good job. And then lastly, obviously, as you can see here, I really like eating at Gusto. It's in the Rochester airport, and it did a really good job reading the total, the tip, etc. Let's close this batch and move on to our next demonstration. Okay, for our next demonstration, we're going to be utilizing a very simple scripting to a REST service. In this case, we're going to be utilizing 2 indexing steps in our workflow with a server-side script. So essentially, the user gets prompted for a zip code. We go out to a web service. We pass that zip code to the web service. It then returns a state associated with that zip code. So this is a great example of utilizing our server-side JavaScript functionality as part of a typical asynchronous workflow process. So let's take a look at how this works. Okay, so we're going to go and hit a new batch here. We're going to select our scripting export. And as you can see here, I have quite a few different scripting examples. We can do a lot with our scripting functionality. Each particular module has its own JavaScript scripting language. Each module has its own JavaScript scripting capability with different trigger points depending on when you want that script to fire. As you can see here, I have our zip code validation. We're going to select some sample document. I'm going to take our bank statement for Sikorsky here, and we're going to index this. And as you can see, we're going to put in this particular zip code. I'm going to use my lasso OCR, grab that zip code. Okay, and now hit the close batch. Okay, and let's now take a look. We should have that batch come back. Okay, here it is. It's now in our second indexing step. So if we did it right, you can see here that State Connecticut comes back from that web service call. So again, we put in the zip code. The system went out and populated the state based on that particular zip code. This is just an easy way of leveraging third-party web services or online internet-based tools to leverage data extraction or data validation or the ability to populate other like information based on a metadata value. So we'll close this batch and move on to our next demonstration. Okay, so our last demonstration will be utilizing some basic zone capture with optical mark with clustered zones. So this is the most common application for things like testing forms, surveys, and in this particular case, as you notice on our example here, we have 10 different choices. How likely would you be to recommend this facility? And someone could put in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So the way that we utilize So in this particular case, we can draw a clustered zone, which means that the system can figure out what bubble that person filled in. Instead of having to basically manually figure out what number was filled in, we can use the cluster zone to tell us. So we're going to be leveraging Microsoft Computer Vision to read the optical mark, and then we're going to see, as you can see in this particular case, the zoom the zone area. Got that. So we're going to be utilizing the Microsoft Computer Vision ICR engine to read that last text area. We're going to be utilizing the Microsoft Computer Vision. We're going to be utilizing the Microsoft Computer Vision engine to read the text block at the end of this particular form. It does a really good job actually interpreting the handwriting in an unstructured way. We're going to be leveraging our optical mark functionality built into the core product, where we'll tweak the zone to make sure that we know whether the bubble has been filled or not. So let's take a quick look at this example. All right, we'll create a new batch here. Select our bubble form. OMR. Let's browse out. Demo documents, bubble test form. So we'll grab these. They're 2 pages each, and we'll process them. Okay, and then you can see as batches come in, these are new batches that are coming in today that are in the step. And okay, we have our OMR form here. So let's take a look at what we got. Okay, first off, you can see the number 3 here. That is the result of that particular clustered zone. Now, again, we can define what that means. Yes, mostly. And as you can see, the columns, we're going to be putting that in. That is part of the OMR setup. So is it filled in? And if so, what row and column was filled in? And then we can actually put the appropriate value. So you can see here, yes, somewhat, no, yes, somewhat. And at the end, we have a text area. And you can see it did a really good job extracting that information. Here on the second one, I like to point this out. Actually, cut that. So in this particular text area zone, Microsoft did a really good job of interpreting the handwriting in a non-structured way. But as you notice here, you could see in the between enterprise, there was this little hiccup, somebody writing that. But the system utilized natural language processing to understand that the word the was the appropriate value to put into that space. And you could see it actually ignored that value and put the right information in here. And as you can see below, what the parse value and what the extracted value is. So using the clustered zones, we're able to also show the and in our second ICR text area, you can see that it did a really good job extracting that information as well. We can put all sorts of different scripting capability as it relates to the extracted metadata values. So we can run this through additional translation and things like Google Translation Services, if the need for extraction and then the ability to convert to a different language is necessary. All right, we're done with this particular demonstration. I wanted to thank everybody for attending this session today and look forward to